What's up, middle school? How are we doing? My name is Jeremy. I work here at the church. I'm excited to be with you guys tonight. Got some handsome fellas bringing out my table. I appreciate that so much. So much. No, we're not talking about popcorn tonight. It's just the best bucket I could find around the church. Okay, we don't have any good buckets, apparently. So the popcorn bucket it is. Like I said, I work here at the church. Student ministry, middle school, high school ministry changed my life when I was your age. I had people in my life like Isaac, like your small group leaders, who are really the reason I'm standing here on the stage now, because my life probably would have went 100 million different terrible directions had people not gotten in my life and gotten involved and spoken truth to me at a young age. So you guys are in good hands. Keep coming on Wednesday nights is all I'll say about that. But right now we're in this series called Foundations. And we're looking through Luke 6 as a starting point, which is kind of this story. And the main point of the whole series is this: a life built on anything but Jesus will fail. A life built on anything else will fail every single time. And the story in Luke 6, hopefully you've been here for a few weeks, you've already heard it, or maybe you know it, but let me explain it like this. We live down here in the South. We have these things called hurricanes, don't we? Yes. We also have a beautiful beach. So right now in your mind, put yourself at the beach. You're looking out. There's the sand. There's the water. And there's these two houses. One is built on the sand. It's got a front porch, a back porch. It's got a dining room. It's got a game room. It's a dope house built on the sand. But then next door, there's another house built. And this house is built on a foundation. There is a slab of concrete, a rock there that it sits on. Here's the deal. This year, hurricane season hasn't been too bad, right? And in the same way, sometimes in life, things are going good and not a lot of things are coming, but eventually, it's always inevitable that in life, storms will come. And when the storm comes and those two houses are sitting side by side, one will be completely wiped out, not recognizable. There will be no semblance of a house left, but the other one will still be standing. It won't be in perfect condition because when the storms of life come, we don't just get by and we're all good and everything's perfect. No, I mean, the storms of life hurt us, right? That house may have a leak, may have to repair the roof, may have to fix some windows, right? May have to fix the fence, but the house is still standing. And so when the storms of life come, it is so important that we have a foundation. And so that's what this series is all about, our foundations. And tonight we're talking about the foundation of worship. So what is worship? Now, I'll be honest, the church has done a really poor job of explaining what worship is. So much so that when we all think about worship, we almost all think about what just happened, right? Because we even call that the worship band. We call that style of music the worship music, right? We have events here at the church that we call nights of worship, where we sing a bunch of songs and then we go home. So the church as a whole, not just Three Circle, but the whole church all across the world, we've done a really poor job of utilizing the word worship the way that it's meant to be used. So what is worship? Well, we're going to find out tonight. So one thing we're going to find out what worship is. We can't be a worshiper and build our house on this foundation of worship if we don't know what it is. So that's where we're going to start, worship. Well, when we look at the word worship, when we go back a couple hundred years, we look at this Old English. You know, Old English, have you ever looked at Old English? They say words really weird. But worship was worthship, right? Worth. So that's kind of a clue there to what it means. It's something that has worth. So here's kind of my general definition of what worship is. Generally speaking, this isn't in church world. This isn't in the worldly world. This is kind of just a general, all-encompassing definition of what worship is to give praise, adoration, acknowledgement, to someone or something that we have decided has great worth. That'd be kind of a general definition of worship, okay? So like with anything, when we're trying to figure out life and figure out what to do, we're going to look at the scripture because scripture is always our starting point. It always guides us. So we're going to go tonight to Romans chapter 12, and we have that on the screens for you so you can follow along. Romans chapter 12, verse 1, therefore. Now, when you see therefore, you always want to stop and see what came before that. So let me explain real quick. In the book of Romans, the Apostle Paul is writing to the church in Rome. For 11 chapters, he's explaining how amazing God is and everything that he has done for us. He explains our salvation. He explains the sacrifice of Jesus. He explains all the good things that God has ever done for 11 whole chapters. And then he gets to chapter 12 and he says, therefore, which is kind of like a because. All this happened, and now here's what you're supposed to do. He says, therefore, I urge you, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. This is your true and proper worship. So that's kind of how the Bible defines worship for us right out the gate. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. And verse 2 is important, and we don't quite have time to deal with it tonight, but it says, I'll read it. Do not conform to the pattern of this world. And that's not random. He talks about the world because the world is fighting for your worship. The world is fighting for your attention. He says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. But what I don't want to just blow over and miss is this idea of a living sacrifice. Y'all, that is an oxymoron. Do you know what an oxymoron is? It's like jumbo shrimp, right? It's like when two words or two ideas go together, they don't quite make sense. Another one, I have 3 kids, and they're awesome, but sometimes they're big babies, okay? They're big babies. Another oxymoron, big and baby. And then the one that always gets me is paper towel. Like, is it paper or is it a towel? Why would we make a towel out of paper? The whole thing that makes sense. Those are oxymorons, okay? So living sacrifice, because living means what? Alive. What does sacrifice mean? Dead. There you go. The problem is, even the word sacrifice, we kind of water down, right? Like, mom comes into your room, you're like, oh, fine, mom, I'll give up playing my PlayStation to go to Hobby Lobby with you, fine. And like, you think that's your sacrifice for the day. You gave up playing PlayStation to go to Hobby Lobby with your mom, right? Man, that's a pretty weak sacrifice, okay? So when you read the scripture, when you're reading Romans 12, you have to understand Paul and understand who he's writing to. So he's writing to the church in Rome, which would have been Romans who have now converted into Christianity, which would have been Jews who have now converted to Christianity. And he says living sacrifice, and I guarantee that jumped off the page to them. I guarantee it, because they understood sacrifice in a way we don't really use or talk about anymore. You see, the laws for the Jews were that sacrifice was a part of life. You did this often. You know, we are fortunate now to come after Jesus came, and I don't want to say it's easier, but man, we don't have to kill goats and put them on an altar anymore, y'all, so that's good, right? But that's what sacrifice was back then, and they did this often. To make up for their sins, they had to ask forgiveness, so they would make sacrifices. So this phrase, living sacrifice, would have jumped off the page. They would have been like, whoa, what does that mean? How is a dead thing now alive? What is Paul asking us to do? And if Paul were here today, this is what I think Paul would summarize it for us. I think he would say this: devote all you are to follow Jesus. Devote all you are. Devote your heart to follow Jesus. Devote your mind. Devote your soul. Devote your strength. Devote all you are to follow Jesus. Get rid of your plans and follow his. Get rid of your desires and now follow his. Sacrifice your wants, your dreams, your desires, and follow his. And now I've been in your shoes before. I've been sitting when a pastor has said that, and I've always been like, dude, that's kind of a drag, bro. Like, I have to give up all the things I want and go with what Jesus wants. What if what God says sucks? Like, what if his plan for my life isn't any good? What if it's uncomfortable? It's okay to have that thought. I've had it before. But let me tell you, after living 33 years on this planet, and I guarantee you, every leader in here would tell you, man, every plan God has had for us has always been better. It's always been better than my plan. My plan's always pretty terrible. I'll be honest with you. Give your plans to him. Devote all you are to follow Jesus. That's the idea of the living sacrifice. And of course, the Bible is so good at explaining itself. So now we're going to go to Hebrews chapter 13, where it even explains this idea of sacrifice a little bit more. And hopefully some of these words jump out to you. Through Jesus, which again, right away is important. We're not going to stay on this, but you can't do this without him. Therefore, let us continually offer to God a sacrifice of praise. Okay, there's one. The fruit of lips that openly profess his name. And do not forget to do good and to share with others. For such sacrifices, God is pleased. Okay, so do you see what's going on? Paul's saying living sacrifice, that's what we're supposed to do. So we know that when we do that, that is an act of worship. So if sacrificing now our wants, our desires, our needs to his is worship, so now we can say these are sacrifices. Doing good is a sacrifice. To sharing with others is a sacrifice. Those things are uncomfortable. I'm not naturally good at those. I don't naturally want to do those things. Professing his name is a sacrifice. So now what we can say is sacrifice equals worship. So to praise is worship. To do good is worship. To share is worship. You see, worship is so much more than just singing. That's a huge part of it. And that's very, very important. But man, it's so much more than that. It's so much more than just singing. And the term worship really isn't, it's not really a word that's in the Bible. I mean, it's in our translations. The same way that the word love is in our translations. So you probably already know, because you guys are smart. In the Bible, there's like 4 or 5, 6, a ton of different words for love, right? But we just say love. We say, I love lamp, I love chocolate, I love wife, I love ball, right? Like that's what we say. We have one word. The Bible has many words for love. And in the same way, there's many words that actually we translate to worship. But when we go back and read the original words, they now give us a clue as to what worship truly is. So here's a couple, and they're weird. I'm probably going to say them all wrong, but you don't know, so it's all good. Here we go. Abad is the Hebrew word. The Greek word latreu means to serve, service, to minister. It's one word for worship. The Greek word proskuneo, the Hebrew word is shachak, which means to submit or to bow down. All worship. The Greek word homologia, which means to profess our faith, to praise, to be thankful. Those are all words that we have now translated to mean worship, which for us means we can go back and say, oh, these definitions are attributed to worship, meaning serving is worship. Submitting and bowing down to God and his plans for our life is worship. Praising him, being thankful and grateful to him, that is an act of worship. So worship is not just about singing, but I don't want you to hear me and think I'm beating up singing, okay? Because I love that. When I was in middle school like you guys, I saw the worship band and I was like, oh, dude, I'm going to buy a guitar. I made my mom buy me one. I learned how to play. I got in the youth band. And because of that, getting involved in church, I'm now here today. And worship is a huge part of my life as far as the music goes. I love it. And the great picture that I think worship in music paints for us is this. Every week, every Sunday, all across the world, but let's just use this building for an example. Hundreds, really thousands among a couple gatherings, all come in here and we all sing the same words, the same songs to the same God. It is this beautiful picture of unity when we all worship together in song, in praise. And so I always wonder, I'm a millennial, and my generation was all about changing the world. We were growing up in like we were like teenagers in the 2000s, and we thought, oh, the internet's here. We can change the world now, and that was what we longed after. And it was such a difficult thing. We're like, oh, that's what we want to do, but we can't really do it. But I always wonder, man, actually, maybe it's easier than we thought. Maybe if the church in unity went outside of these walls and continued to worship through our service, through our professing of faith, through our actions, through our loving others, man, maybe we could change the world. Maybe if the world saw a unified voice from the church outside of these walls, it could change things. So middle schoolers, what does that mean for you? Man, what if you guys went out of here and you were unified in how you treated others? You were unified in the things you were saying and the things you were doing on your sports team, in your neighborhood, in your family, with your friends at school. You guys could have a huge impact on this area by worshiping outside of these walls. So worship is about more than what happens in this room. But if you're taking notes, here's a big chunk to write down. A worshiper must be a humble person, and that's important. The humble part is important because if you're prideful, you cannot worship. You're either humble or prideful. You can't worship if you're prideful. You're really only worshiping yourself. A worshiper must be a humble person who is willing to submit to God's plans. We already talked about that, right? Give up your plans, submit to God's plans, live a life of service to his kingdom. And look, these things sound hard, but here's how this plays out, just real quick. Service to his kingdom is just caring about people. When you go home, it's, hey, mom, hey, dad, is there anything I can do for you before I go to bed? Is there anything you need help with real quick? No? Okay, cool. When you get to class tomorrow, ask somebody if they need help. Hey, do you need help on this? No? Okay, cool. Or maybe they do. After practice is over, hey, coach, you need help cleaning up? Is there any trash I can throw away? Is there anything I need to carry out for you? That's how service is played out. We kind of complicate these things, but live a life of service to his kingdom. It also means serve the church. I know you guys are in middle school and you probably feel like you're kind of luckier in that in-between. You're not a preteen anymore, which is kind of like just a big baby, to be honest with you. And you're not quite a high schooler yet, where there's a ton of responsibility and expectations. You guys get to coast for another year or two before the responsibility and expectations come. But man, serve your church. Find a way to get plugged in. Talk to Isaac and your small group leader. Find a way to serve the kingdom. Then number 3, express gratitude and praise. And that would involve worship here through song, through singing along, through raising your hands. It would also involve prayer, being thankful to God for all he has done for you. Tell him how good he is. Tell him how good he's been to you and your family. Tell him how good he's been in your life. Gratitude and praise. And then the 4th one would be to tell others about him. I love what it said in Hebrews 13. It says to openly profess his name. That's not like a hiding the light under a bushel, right? That's a being open about who you are. And if you're like, yeah, but that one's kind of hard because people don't really ask me about it too much. Well, maybe because there's not that much different about you. And maybe if you worshiped outside of these walls with your actions, people would pick up on it. Maybe you say, dude, what's so different about you? Man, and there's a great opportunity to openly express your faith and your love about him. To do these things, middle school, is to build our lives on the foundation of worship. So we're going to wrap up here in a second, and the main question isn't, do you worship or don't you worship? It's not really the question here tonight. The question is, who or what do you worship? We were creatures created to worship something. And there's a lot of things that get in our way. The best analogy I always see for this is the idea of a throne. We all have a throne in our life. And whoever or whatever is on the throne is what demands our attention, it demands our time, it demands our affection, and we all have things that sit on the throne of our lives. Here's a few. For some people, that's in the throne. It's your sport, it's the team you're on, it's the thing you love to do. That takes all of your time, energy, affection. That's what you care the most about. Maybe you don't play sports, but maybe every Saturday you wake up and it's game day on the TV at 9 a.m. and you're just watching football all day, being kind of lazy, not doing too much stuff. I'll be honest, if I can be honest with you guys for a minute. Football's not really mine. I'm more of a soccer guy. And, my daughter's down here, and she knows that every Saturday morning in my house, about 6 a.m., the alarm goes off, and 6:30, a game always kicks off. And if it were up to me and my wife, was gone for some reason on that Saturday, I would watch soccer for 10 hours straight. I really would. It's a little embarrassing, I'm going to be honest with you. And it's even worse when my team plays and my team is losing, okay? And they know when my team is losing, it's probably going to be a bad day. And the bad thing about soccer, I'll be honest with you, this is a tangent, and I'm sorry, but my games are at 9 a.m., so when my game's over by 10:30, my family knows the day's ruined if my team lost. Oh, that's embarrassing to say out loud. I am so embarrassed for myself. Anyways, that's what I struggle with. Maybe you have something like that that's constantly fighting for the throne in your life. Maybe it's not football. Maybe it's actually, maybe it's that thing right there. Maybe it's a phone. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's your social life. Maybe it's not that specifically. Maybe it's another device. Maybe it's a gaming system that's constantly taking over your life and taking all of your time and affection and attention. And a great way to find out is if I said, hey, can I hold your phone for 5 minutes? Are you squirming? Not yet. What if I said, can I hold your phone for an hour? If I could have your phone for a week? If I could just borrow your phone for a month? You're all lying. You're all squirming on the inside. It's fine. And that's how I know that that fights for the throne of your life. You guys couldn't give up your phones. Don't lie. Don't lie in church. Come on now. Maybe it's not that, though. Maybe it's really not that. Maybe it's this right here. And I don't mean Barbie as in toys. I don't mean Barbie as in... This stands for your appearance. For some of us, our appearance is what drives everything we do, every decision we make, everything we think about. Maybe it's how others view us. Maybe that's constantly fighting for the throne in our life. And if it's none of those things, sometimes it's this right here. Sometimes it's us. Sometimes we're so selfish that we put ourselves on the throne. Barbie's fine. Sometimes we sit ourselves on the throne. We don't really sacrifice our desires. We don't really sacrifice our plans for what God has for us. We sit on the throne. We do what we want to do. So the question I want you to think about tonight is who or what is on the throne of your life? Who or what is on the throne of your life? And if you're struggling to think of what it could be, again, it's those easy questions. What has most of your attention? What takes up most of your time? What takes up most of your energy? Think about those things. And I'll just say, man, I don't have this all figured out. Jesus isn't always in the throne of my life. I just told you every Saturday I struggle with it, right? And it's more than just Saturday. And I promise you, Isaac's amazing. He doesn't always have Jesus on the throne of his life. It's a constant battle. We're all in this together. But the more you find out, the more you can figure out what those things that cause you to stumble are, it gets a little bit easier to fight. So as we talk about worship, how to be a worshiper, man, we got to worship with Jesus on the throne. He's got to be on the throne of our lives. So I'm going to pray for you guys. You guys are about to go to small group here in a second. And I want you to think about this tonight. I want you to talk about it. And talk about how you can be a worshiper this week, how you can, serve others this week, how you can talk about Jesus maybe a little bit more this week, how you can do good a little bit more this week. I want you to dwell on those things. Let's pray.